and he started crying, but I didn't. And I kind of just looked at him, and he was just like, I'll never forget these words. He was like, "You are cold-hearted." And I kind of just looked at him like, but you're the reason I'm like this. But I never.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Inspiring Beauty and Believers. I'm Song, and today we are going to continue our discussion on the voices of women in parental abandonment. Today I have with me Omni. I always do this, you guys can never see my hand. Omni. And she's going to be discussing her story from her childhood and how it has affected her in her adulthood. So Omni, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Well, I can't say that I had a horrible childhood because I had a very good childhood. The family that I was surrounded with made sure that myself and my sister had a very good childhood and that we lacked for nothing and we wanted for nothing. So as far as the material aspect of my childhood, it was great. I really can't complain about the childhood that I had. I had a great childhood. I have childhood friends that I still keep in contact with. Like it was a good childhood. Even though I had a great childhood, I did not have my father in my life as a father should have been in my life. My dad, he was there, but he was in and out of my life all the way up until I had my son. When I think about it, like he was there, but he really wasn't there up until I had my son, who is now 9 years old. So up until 9 years ago, we had a really like spotty relationship up until my son was born. Yeah, so as I love my dad, and I'm not going to say like, you know, he was a horrible father, because he wasn't. He did what he could. But as far as that physical and emotional presence that I, as his daughter, would have liked to have, I did not have that. So I think a lot of the feelings that I have towards people, or even trusting, plays a big part in the fact that my dad wasn't there the way that I expected him to be there, both physically and emotionally. Like physically, we didn't live in the same city, so obviously that wasn't going to be, the easiest option for him. Emotionally, I mean, you can only do so much talking on the phone.
And so your parents got divorced. So there was
yes.
There was a time where you did have him there with you physically, but then they separated and he moved to a different location.
So I was born in San Antonio, and my parents were together up until I was 4 years old. And that's when they got a divorce. And when they got a divorce, my mom moved me and my younger sister, back to El Paso, and we lived there. So my dad stayed in San Antonio, and we moved to El Paso, and we lived there up until from 4 to 16. Well, my age, I was 4, and I moved back to San Antonio when I was 16. So 12 years of kind of seeing my dad. I think I may have saw my dad in those 12 years, maybe like 3 or 4 times in those 12 years. He would call, but as far as like physically seeing him, it was very few and far between. Now, I know that there were times that he wanted to see us more, but by the time I was middle school, I was playing sports. So I was like, hey, I have this AAU tournament, so I can't come to San Antonio because I'm playing basketball during the summer. So, and then the same with my sister, she was running track. So it was like we had our own things going on. And so because of that, we weren't able to connect the way that we should have. I feel like, this is just my personal opinion, he should have just came out to support us in the things that we were doing, because we really did make a life outside of him, because we had moved away. So like we couldn't just stop living our lives because we were no longer in the same place. We still had to live our lives, and we were doing that, and we were in sports, and we were being active in our church, and you know, just growing up as kids. So I mean, it was only so much that we were willing, or at least I was willing, to let go, because I was like, this is my normal now. This has been my normal since 4 up until, you know, 16, until we moved back to San Antonio. This is what I do. This is all I know. So it was just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. You can come and support me in that, or you don't have to. And I think early on, I realized that if he was there, cool. If he wasn't, cool. I was still gonna do what I had to do to, one, be better in the sport that I was doing, because I was one of those that was like a perfectionist. I had to be the best at everything that I did. So I worked really hard at doing that. If you were there, that was great. I would love for you to be there, but if you can't be, I can't stop because you're not there. So I think I took that persona, or I guess I took that persona on very early on. It was like, okay, and being that I was the oldest of me and my sister, I had to internalize a lot of feelings I had towards my dad, because I had to be the strong one for my sister, because she was the one that, you know, would cry out for him, and I was the one that had to kind of be like, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Let's do this, or let's do that. So I internalized a lot of things, and because of that, I think that's why I took on the persona of like, hey, if you're here, you're here. If you're not, you're not. Because I had to protect myself. As I was protecting myself, I was making sure to protect my sister as well. So yeah.
I like that you said that. There are a few things. One of the things that you mentioned about, you know, that you did what you were able or willing to do as a child. But a lot of times when that separation happens, sometimes the parent, so it could be a father or a mother,
Right.
but the parent will forget that it is their responsibility to reach out to the child, to let the child know that they're there for them, to
Right.
be
Absolutely.
and stuff. Because even if your parent is still living in the same household with you, you can have that emotional abandonment because they're not there. They're not showing up for the things that are important for you, the things that you're working hard for. And so that's extremely important. And then the other thing that you talked about, which is something that I did a lot, and sometimes I still struggle with, is internalizing those emotions, because you have to be stronger for your younger sibling.
Right.
And I had 2 younger sisters, and so I always kind of just carried the weight for everybody else. And then I pushed back everything that I was feeling, because I could not deal with having my own feelings and then being strong for other people.
Exactly.
But I think sometimes we do that, and it can cause those unhealthy connections for us, because we don't know how to open up and be vulnerable with people when we really have a weakness.
Absolutely. I can totally agree with that. Because even in that moment, like I had gotten so used to internalizing everything that I had become numb to a lot of things, and I had built a really strong guard up, like nobody could get through it. And it brings me back to a time when I had actually went to San Antonio. For I had paid for a plane ticket to go to my best friend's graduation, and my dad actually came and picked me up, and I was there for a couple days, and he actually took me back to the airport. And as I was leaving, he gave me a hug and he started crying, but I didn't. And I kind of just looked at him, and he was just like, I'll never forget these words. He was like, "You are cold-hearted." And I kind of just looked at him like, "But you're the reason I'm like this." But I never told him that, but in my head, I'm like, "You're the reason I'm like this." I'm not necessarily saying that I'm blaming all of it on him, but he was the first person for me to put my guard up to, because I was like, it was like, okay, I know that it wasn't my fault that you and my mom got a divorce. I know that. But the simple fact is that you left and then weren't really trying to reach out the way that you should have been as my father. Like, I am the spitting image of you. I look exactly like you. And for you to say that I'm cold-hearted, like, why would you think that that was okay to say to your daughter that you left at 4 years old? And, I was always that person that was like, the optimistic person, even though on the outside it didn't look like I was being the most optimistic person, but on the inside I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give my dad another chance. He's gonna really do it this time. He's really going to be there for us this time. I always kept giving him those chances, only to be disappointed. And I've learned that over the course of my adulthood, and even as a mother, that I can't place the expectation I have of you on you. I can't, because I may end up disappointed and you may never know why I'm disappointed. So it's like I've learned to take the expectation off of people in general, but a lot of it on him. And because of that, I've freed myself, because I'm like, listen, if I don't have this expectation of you, I'm not going to be disappointed, because I can be disappointed and you'll never know why I'm disappointed, because I still do have those days where I still internalize things, and then one day it'll just blow up, and I just blow up, and you're just sitting there. It's like, we were just talking about a TV. Where did this come from? So I'm still actively learning that. I will say that me and my dad, we do have a better relationship, because we've actually sat down and hashed out a couple things. There's only so far that we can go before it turns into, a big crying situation, and that's not what I do. Like, that's on him. And I think I can also say that I think me not being as emotional and being vulnerable, as you said, that plays a really big part. I don't cry for a lot of things. I've said this to a couple people. Like, I only cry for two people. That's Jesus and my son. That's it. Anything else. And I believe that because of the internal feelings and putting my guard up, I won't allow myself to be vulnerable.
Right.
And I mean, bringing it back to my dad, like, I've tried to be vulnerable with him, and it just, at least in my opinion, it just doesn't work for us right there. We have to keep we keep our relationship at face value. We just
Right.
keep it there. We can't really go too deep. And I mean, I'm just glad that he's actively in my life. It took me having, a child, but I'm just glad that he's here and that he is willing to um not necessarily make up for the time, but make up for the time with his grandson. And
Right.
I mean, I've gotten to the point where it's like I I'm grown now. We can't do the father daughter things that you would do as a child. We can't do that. But if you want to do that with your grandson, I'm more than okay with that. Like, I would love for you to have that. So yeah, I mean, I'm still a work in progress. I can't say that I have all the answers because I definitely don't.
Right.
But I am a work in progress.
I
So
think I think that we all are continuously going to be a work in progress. Um, but the fact that you're able to acknowledge those areas and able to at least hold conversations with him is very important, because some people can't even be in the same room with their parents, and that those are deep, deep scars that haven't even been touched. It's kind of like when you have that fresh scar and you don't want to touch it because it hurts so much.
mhm,
So I'm glad that you guys are able to work through those things. So
yeah.
you said that you moved back to San Antonio when you were 16. Were you guys still not connected then? Was he living in San Antonio at that time?
He was living in San Antonio. I lived there from 16 until 18 before I went to college. So I finished high school in San Antonio. Um, Even though we lived in the same city, I didn't see him very much. I, yeah, like it just, I don't know why we didn't see each other as much. It just, I think because I was doing my own thing, I was playing basketball and I was always, trying to keep myself busy and, with the social life and all that stuff, I was always busy. And I guess he just didn't make the time to come see us. That's a question mark that's still there. It was like we lived here for 2 years. You didn't there was no reason why you couldn't come see us. When I did get my car, um I tried to make it a point to go and see him every Sunday, but I was going out of my way to go and see him. He would never come to us. And this only happened after I got my car. And that had been after we had been in San Antonio for a year because I didn't get my car until I was 17. Yeah, I was 17. So I would make it a point to go and see him and see my dad's side of the family because they all lived in San Antonio as well. So we would go and see him and we wouldn't even be there for long. It maybe be like an hour or something, but it was just something that just so we could have that connection. But it, like I said, I had to make that initiative to go see him, even though he had a car and was able to come see us. But he never made that attempt to come see us. It was always, let me go back. So that's who he was. That's not who he is now. But I learned while I lived in San Antonio for those 2 years that he wasn't a person that I knew that I could depend on. Um, he was he was just Mr. Bush to me at that point, and it it's sad to say that that's how I thought of the person who gave me life and who I look exactly like, but that's where I was at that time. I was just like, this is just the guy that helped make me at this point. Like I've tried reaching out to him and it's just not working out. I guess he just doesn't want to be reached out to. And so at that point, I was just like, kind of like wipe my hands of him, um, at least as far as looking at him as my father figure. Now I can't say that I haven't had father figures in my life. My grandfather was a prime example of a great father figure as far as providing for his family and making sure that his family was taken care of in every aspect. He wasn't the most affectionate person. I think that's why I'm a lot like him. He's not affectionate at all. I'm not the most affectionate person. Kylan is getting me out of that because he's very affectionate. So, but I can't say that I haven't had father figures in my life. It was just the person who gave me life wasn't being that father figure that he should have been in the past. Because all we can do is move forward this day. Because I read a quote, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but it said, as a child, um, your parents make the choices for you, but as you become an adult, the choices that you make will define you. And it was very profound to me, because it's like, yeah, I can keep going back and saying, oh, I'm the reason why I'm like this is because, my dad wasn't there. But, you know, the reason why you may have some ill feelings towards, you know, people, or you may have trust issues towards some people, acknowledge that. But at the same time, you have to forgive, and you have to take it one day at a time to define the life that you want. So I try to live by that every day, and I try to make sure that as a mother, that I do everything that I can for my son, because right now I am making the decisions for him as a child, but eventually he's going to grow up and have to make his own decisions.
Okay, so when you talked about all the different things that you went through and your trust issues with your dad, how do you feel that has affected your being able to have relationships with other people, specifically with men? Because I know as a female, and something that my dad and I talk about a lot, he says that, is father who instills in a daughter what it is that she's supposed to look for in a husband, or for future relationships. So how has that affected you?
It has definitely affected me more in I'm working on trusting men, not men in general, but like in relationships. So the way that I approached relationships was, if I'm here, that means that I like you. That was me. And going, I mean, even with Kylan's dad, he was one of those people that was like, he would want to hear, it's like, hey, I like you, or hey, he would ask me all the time. He was like, do you like me? And I would look at him like, I'm here. So that should mean that I like you. Like, I just put those together. I was like, I'm more of a action type person. Like, if, yeah, you can say all day, hey, I like you, but if you're not showing it in your actions, then it's just words that are in the air. And I think I took that a lot from, my relationship with my dad, because he would say a lot of things, but the action didn't correspond with what he was saying. And so I'm a, you need to show me. Don't just tell me, show me.
Right.
Because if you're not showing me, then your words are just, they're going to fall to the ground, because they're literally going on deaf ears. Like, I'm not one for the sweet talk and stuff. So I will definitely say that that's definitely played a part in the reason why I have, you know, trust issues with relationships with men. And I mean, even with the relationship that I have with my son's father, I'm seeing a pattern of what it was from my childhood. And because of that, I'm just like, I intellectually wise said I would never date someone like my dad. And I ended up dating someone and having a child with someone who was exactly like my dad.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, how did I end up here when I knew that this is not what I wanted, but I still ended up with the thing that I did not want. And it was a real epiphany for me when I was just like mind blown. Like I literally ended up with the person I said I would never want to be with. And it was just it was very it was just a very disheartening realization that I had, because this was the first person that I allowed myself to be vulnerable with. Mm-hmm. Since I had not let myself be vulnerable with anyone, and I let myself be vulnerable with this person only to get the same results that I had got with my dad, with being vulnerable. And after that, like, yes, I had the parent abandonment, but then after having my son, it was like, okay, so I'm under lock and key now. Like, this is a fortress. Nobody's breaking through this. And as I've gotten older, I think really when I turned 30, like something just like something clicked, and it was like God was just peeling away he was just peeling away. Like I used the illustration of an onion. He was just peeling away the layers, and my 30th year was my best year as far as realizing who I am, and realizing that it's okay to be vulnerable, because that's where you really find your true self. Am I completely there? No. I mean, I'm only 31. That only happened a year ago, but just allowing myself to really be vulnerable. And I said earlier that I only cry for Jesus and my son, but I don't think I had ever really been vulnerable with the Father up until I turned 30. Like I remember one day I was in the shower and I just cried and cried and cried. I had never cried like that. And I was just like, God, you're the only person that can heal this. And it was just after that, I was just like, you know what? This is what I have to do. Like I have to allow people in. I can't just keeping people on the outside and just letting them see what just allow them to see the physical, what I'm presenting to them. I have to allow people to come in. And I think, I mean, up until I turned 30, I was holding on to that because it was a seed that was implanted when I was 4 years old, and it took me 26 years to finally get to this point where it's like, okay, I'm going to allow people in and be vulnerable, because in that vulnerability, that's when you're your true self. Because I had never really been my true self up until that point. I was always the person to I was the people pleaser, and I became a people pleaser because I didn't want them to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that even in that time of being a people pleaser, I wasn't being my authentic self because I was trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And because of that, I never knew who I truly was. And I think this decade of, my 30s is just going to keep uncovering the layers of who Omni is. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited, for my future. And like I said, I have my dad. My dad is in my corner. He's one of my biggest cheerleaders now. We have a better relationship. He's a great, what does he call himself? Granddad. To to my son. And I'm continually working on trusting men in that relationship aspect. I will say that I'm not completely there yet. And I've gotten the questions where it's like, how come you're not dating, or why are you still single? I'm still single because there's still some things that I need to work on that I don't want to bring into a relationship that has nothing to do with that person.
Right.
So I acknowledge that I have some things that I need to work on, and it's not the other person. It's not the other person who has to try and fix it, because that's not what they came into this relationship for, So, I mean, that's just how I look at it.
Girl, you said so many good things. I really could just end it right there, but I just want to touch on a few things that you said because it was so awesome. So you talked about really what I heard was just removing the mask. Like when we only allow people to see our perfectly put together self because we are afraid to be vulnerable because of that fear of rejection, which comes abandonment. And then we are people pleasers because of parental abandonment, because if we do what they want us to do, if we always try to do everything right, then they won't leave us. And that's that core fear that we have of being left again by somebody, or opening up and being vulnerable and showing people who we really are, our flaws and our mistakes, and everything that we don't always have perfectly put together. When people see that, if they don't like it, then they leave, and we don't want to be left alone again. And that's that inner cry of the little child in us that still is hurting it. And sometimes we forget that on the inside of us is still that trauma that we've never dealt with. And until we deal with that, we carry it, even though we can be the age of an adult, but inside we are still a broken child, and we have to go back and heal that brokenness, heal that child. And I'm so proud of you for taking this time to be able to be vulnerable and be your authentic self, so that we can see the best of you in everything that you do. And so that whenever God brings that man into your life, he will get the best portion of you, and it won't be with all of the baggage that we tend to carry around because we're afraid to deal with it. That's really what it comes to, is a lot of times we don't deal with our baggage, because if we remove these things, one of my biggest fears was, if I remove the hard, strong side of me that everybody is used to, all well put together, and I can handle everything, if I remove this, then who will I be? I don't know that. And I don't want to be that person, because that person scares me. So when I had to really drop that guard, and God was like, you have to learn to let people in, it was scary. But I was like, this is the only way I'm going to be able to really be me and let people know I'm not perfect all the time. I've had multiple people come up to me and they're like, oh, I just didn't want to talk to you because you just seem so well put together and you're always perfect and everybody speaks so well of you. And I'm like, I am not. I am far from perfect.
From it, like, people got to understand. It's not all rainbows and butterflies over here. I mean, on the outside, it may look like that, but I just put up a really good front. And I totally get it. And and over the last, 30 was my year that it was kind of like, my eye opener. But leading up to 30, that's when I was kind of like, okay, it's okay to not have everything together, because if you have everything together and you finally ask for that, you finally cry for help, they're going to be like, well, we never knew that you needed the help because you always have everything together.
Yes.
And it's like, yes, as the person who tries to keep everything together and the person that people like to come to for advice and all that stuff, it's who do you go to when you need that advice? Because if everybody thinks that you're always put together, they're going to be like, why do you need advice? You already have everything together. So it's more like
Exactly.
You have to be your authentic self. And I think, and I mean, on my blog, I put, at the end of my blog, I started putting authentically Omni. I just be, Brianna's sister or Yolanda's daughter, or even Kylan's mom, who I was for. I mean, I'm still Kylan's mom, but like that was defining me for like his first 4 or 5 years. And I was like, what's going to happen when he grows up? Who am I going to be after that? Who is Omni? And so I've been finding out who Omni is by herself. And I believe that when, I finally get to a point where I know myself, I know myself well enough, that's when God will bring, that perfect person for Kylan and I, because we're
Team.
we're a team. That's my road dog. Like, so yeah, it's just really finding out who you are, and finding out who you are in Christ as well. Finding out who you are in Christ is the best thing that I've ever done, because when I read of how God sees me, then that just, it's like my dad, my heavenly Father thinks so highly of me. I should think the same thing about myself.
Yes.
And regardless of, my biological father, and which I know that he thinks highly of me as well, it's it's the fact that I know that my heavenly Father, who gives me the grace to live this life and walk this walk, that, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's like my heavenly Father has given me this life, and he's given me this walk, that I'm doing this for his glory. Yes. So if I'm still dealing with baggage and things that, came from my past, how am I really glorifying God? How am I being a light to somebody else, So I know that I have to fix the things, and not necessarily fixing it on my own. I'm not doing this in my own strength. I'm doing this with the help of the Holy Spirit as well, to fix the internal things that I have before I can be the light, or be the person that God has for me to be, to glorify his name. Because at the end of the day, what we're here on this earth to do is to glorify God. And that's through our words, our actions, our behavior, our conduct, all of those things. So if I work on who I am, then I can be my true self. And that's the person that God ultimately made me to be, is to be my true self. Now I just have to catch up to what God has already done.
Yes.
So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yes. So before we end, I just want you to share, give people your information on how they can contact you or see your blog, because I want them to be able to get the authentic Omni
So my blog name is Naturally Classic, and that's classic with a K, Klassic, naturallyclassic.com. I share on my page just me in its entirety. So you're going to get fashion, you're going to get style, you're going to get mom life, you're going to get my hair journey, even though there ain't much hair up here anymore. But I talk about, my hair journey of, what I want to do. Yeah, I mean, my blog is just a written version of me, and that's me in its entirety. You get all of me on my blog, whether, like I said, whether it's fashion, style, lifestyle, mom life, all of that. And on my Instagram as well, at the same name, Naturally Classic.
Awesome. I will put the information on here for everybody as well. Thank you for your time, Omni. I appreciate your authenticity. I can't ever say that.
Authenticity.
Yes, authenticity. So thank you for being transparent today and sharing your journey. And I look forward to talking to you again. We'll have another conversation later.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you are very welcome.
All right.
So thank you guys for joining us today. I love you so much. Thank you for continuing with us on this journey. Go ahead and like, comment, and share. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I'm going to keep telling you to subscribe because you're going to be notified every time I post a new video. Videos come out on Saturdays. Sometimes I post videos throughout the week, but you won't know if you're not subscribed.
That subscribe button, guys.
Yes, hit that. I love you guys. I will talk to you later. Have a great day.